Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. Beginning with the nation's border czar calling it a game changer to have a list of federal agencies helping to address illegal immigration. ICE reporting almost 1,000 arrests of undocumented immigrants on Sunday. Amy Kiley has more on the Trump administration's latest efforts.
If you're here illegally, if you broke our laws, then you're going to be targeted.
Across the U.S. and beyond its borders, President Donald Trump is cracking down on illegal immigration. ICE reports almost 1,000 arrests and more than 500 detainers yesterday. Those numbers are from at least Metro Atlanta, Puerto Rico, Colorado, L.A., Austin, and Chicago. They follow news that ICE agents now have a quota of 75 arrests per day. Other federal agencies are helping find undocumented immigrants. The border czar says violent criminals were the targets of a Chicago blitz. The Illinois governor says he'd be fine if it had stopped there, but he says authorities also went after people whose only crime was entering the U.S. illegally.
They're going after people who are law-abiding, who are holding down jobs, who have families here, who may have been here for a decade or 2 decades, and they're often our neighbors and our friends.
Meanwhile, a feud between Trump and Colombia's president might be dying down. Colombia says it's resuming acceptance of U.S. deportation flights. That's after its refusal to accept 2 of them led to both countries' leaders threatening hikes on tariffs. Some analysts worry such increases would force Americans to pay higher prices for certain goods.
The only way that Donald Trump knows how to, quote, lead is by acting like a bully.
He's putting the rest of this hemisphere on notice that you are not dealing with the same president that you were.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
The Drug Enforcement Agency did say that agents arrested nearly 50 undocumented migrants near a raid on Sunday near Denver. This happened at what authorities are calling a makeshift nightclub. Authorities say the raid targeted drug trafficking and members of the Tren de Aragua gang, which has ties to Venezuela. They say agents recovered drugs, weapons, and cash during the raid. The people arrested were turned over to immigration authorities. Now, Nebraska apparently going to be doing its part. Governor Jim Pillen joining the movement put forth by the president, issuing an executive order in the name of immigration. Pillen signed the Support for Federal Immigration Policy Implementation for Nebraska. It outlines actions to be undertaken by state agencies. Pillen says he's requiring the State Patrol and Department of Corrections to fully cooperate with the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice, where, in his words, reasonable suspicion exists a federal immigration law is in violation. It also orders other agencies with law enforcement authority to consider formal procedures and assist the federal government in immigration law enforcement. In other news, an agenda item with great interest to Grand Island won't be discussed as originally planned. Grand Island City Council was set to hear about their Good Life Master Plan, organized through the state's new Good Life District law. Grand Island residents voted in August to authorize an incentive program that would use money earmarked for state sales tax and redirect it to public infrastructure upgrades within the district. Those discussions are now on hold for the time being. No word yet on what caused the delay. The project will eventually include commercial space, multifamily homes, a sports complex, a field house, and an aquatic community center. City officials say they still expect construction to start yet this year. Scary situation in southeast Nebraska. Thankfully, no injuries reported after a plane had to make an emergency landing on a highway. The Thayer County Sheriff's Office called into the emergency airplane landing Sunday. The incident reported just after noon. According to the Sheriff's Office, the airplane landed safely on Highway 136, half a mile east of Hebron. The airplane was then taxied to the Hebron Airport, less than a mile away. No word yet on why the plane needed to make the landing. No one was hurt. The USDA says bird flu has killed over 17 million egg-laying hens in November and December alone. That's nearly half of all the birds killed by the virus last year. It's forcing folks to shell out a little more this year for the breakfast staple. A price outlook from the USDA estimates egg prices will go up more, maybe 20% this year. That's compared to about 2.2% for food prices in general. Government data shows the average price for a dozen of eggs was $4.15 last month. According to the Consumer Price Index, about a 36% increase from last December. The high price being driven by the ongoing bird flu outbreak as well as inflation. Meanwhile, a bill's been introduced in the capital city to protect workers in the agriculture sector from dangerous workplace practices and get ahead of a potential bird flu outbreak by having safeguards in place. Legislative Bill 573 looking to protect poultry industry employees from a strain of avian influenza that's on the rise in the Midwest. It would entitle workers to be paid if an outbreak shuts down their workplace. Bird flu cases up on the East Coast, but also closer to Nebraska, places like Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, and Illinois, and officials worry that Nebraska could be next. Graham Christensen is president of the group GC Resolve, based in Burt County, which works on agriculture and meatpacking industry issues.
Some of the things that we're calling for would be 12 weeks of severance pay for workers and at least 180 days of lost revenue.
Christensen says he and other ag industry advocates also want to see protections for workers who could potentially stop disease outbreaks or other problems before they happen by reporting their concerns.
We want to see labor standards for meat packers, processors, contract growers include whistleblower protections and protections from discrimination when they actually go to try to, report, that they don't feel intimidated.
Recent data from Rural Policy Action show rural workers earn less, are less likely to have benefits like paid leave, and are more likely to be injured on the job. Ag officials across the Midwest say they're working to track avian flu cases and slow its spread. Nebraska, the second state in the nation to adopt an expansive tax credit for thousands of family caregivers and the parents, spouses, and other loved ones they care for on a daily basis. The law passed last legislative session and went into effect this January. Hanky Hazelton has more on how exactly it works.
It's someone who's providing unpaid short-term or long-term care to a parent, spouse, or another loved one. They're helping them with their everyday needs and activities and personal tasks, again, such as transportation, managing finances, scheduling appointments, shopping, even things like wound care, medication management, and that sort of thing.
You mentioned earlier about needing to receive certification from a licensed healthcare provider, and that the person receiving the care needs assistance with at least 2 activities. I was wondering maybe if you might be able to give, just a few of those examples.
Absolutely. Ambulating, dressing, feeding, personal hygiene, continence, and toileting, and that sort of thing. If they need at least help with 2 of those daily activities, again, and certified by the healthcare provider that you're providing that would be one of your first steps. Again, you have to be eligible family member. And again, that comes from the state law. You have to qualify as a dependent. You can be a spouse, a parent, or have other relation by blood or marriage.
If any, are there any stipulations on where a person can be living to receive these benefits?
You must live in a private residence, and so this does not apply for someone that's living in an assisted living or nursing facility or residential care home. You actually have to be residing in the home and where the person is receiving that care.
I also wanted to ask about the tax credit that you said would be up to, I believe, $3,000. But for most people, such as myself, what does that number look like realistically?
It will be up to $2,000 for our general, what we call caregivers. And those that would receive up to $3,000 would be for caring for someone that is a veteran or maybe an individual that has a dementia-related diagnosis. If you have those 2, you can receive the higher end of the $3,000. So the other thing that's important to also keep in mind is this would be 50% of whatever your out-of-pocket costs are that you're submitting. So if you want to receive the full $2,000, you would have to supply receipts and submit up to $4,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. But it's also important for people to remember this is up to that amount. And so even if you don't get to that amount, it's still important that you still file it and get partial of whatever that might be back as a tax credit. One of the qualifications that is another factor that people need to think about is your income. So if you have to make $50,000 or less as a single person, or up to $100,000 or less for a couple, be another caveat of the qualifications on the income side of things.
You mentioned a website where people can sign up and qualify. Where can they find that?
We do have an eligibility tool out there. Again, you're not eligible to receive this until you file your taxes in 2026. But we really want people to get out and start doing things now and getting prepared. So you can go to aarp.org/NE caregiving. And there will be, again, more information that's supplied. The Department of Revenue will be administering the application. There's nothing yet been posted out on their website, but as they promulgate rules and regulations, that information will also be available.
And finally, an organization in southeast Nebraska honored businesses and individuals this past weekend. The Beatrice Area Chamber of Commerce holding their annual dinner at the 1917 Club at Beatrice Country Club. The chamber named its Business of the Year Casper's Construction. It's a firm that's been involved in numerous construction projects around the southeast Nebraska region. The Business Person of the Year was Ryan Trauernicht, Market President of Pinnacle Bank, while the Nonprofit of the Year was the Beatrice Educational Foundation, which played a critical role in funding support for the new Beatrice Elementary School. There were 34 total nominations considered for the various awards. And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com, click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. This is News Channel Nebraska.